For everything from video games, comic books, films, and beyond, you're listening to the Geek Guy Podcast with your host, Albert Albanese, here on the Slam Sessions Podcast Network. What's up, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Geek Guy Podcast right here on the Slam Sessions Podcast Network. As you know, if you want to follow us on Twitter, it's at the Slam Sessions, and if you want to follow us on Facebook, it's facebook.com/the Slam Sessions Podcast Network. In keeping in time with what we did last week, speaking about Logan, we're going to talk about the X-Men movies this week. Last week was a great episode. If you didn't listen to it, please do. I had a great interview with my friend Tom Melendez, who also helped me review the Logan film. We talked a lot in depth about that film. So if you've seen it now, please go back and listen to it. But one of the things that I realized is that Tom has never seen all the X-Men films. So what I actually found was a great list on comicbookmovie.com where they ranked all of the X-Men films made by Fox since they started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through their list. I'm going to talk about each film for a little bit, and then I'm going to tell you where I would move certain films up and down. One noticeable exception from this is the idea that the Deadpool movie is not on this list. I don't feel that the Deadpool movie is a comic book movie from the X-Men. You know, I feel like Deadpool is a comic book movie about Deadpool. Yes, there were elements of the X-Men in there. By that same point, I'm not going to sit here and say that, you know, Deadpool is an X-Men. So that's a little bit of the reason why Deadpool was left off of this. So what I'll be doing is talking about the actual Fox X-Men films. So the ranking originally is from comicbookmovie.com. And it's an interesting ranking, and it's an interesting list. However, I kind of don't feel that their list is actually that good. I have a lot of problems with it, but this also has to do with my personal opinions. I think that most people will actually follow this list and say it's actually pretty solid. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about going through things. There's a lot of films that maybe I liked more than other people. So, as we go through, I'll talk about it. We're going to start off with the first film, which I completely agree with. The bottom barrel, the worst of the franchise, X-Men Origins Wolverine. You know, we saw a couple of X-Men films. We fell in love with the Hugh Jackman Wolverine character. Everybody was looking for an origin story for Wolverine because, as we saw when we first met him in the original X-Men film, we saw that he wasn't he already had a backstory, that was more involved than he was some guy that was at Professor X's school. And, he had a whole big backstory. So we got to see a little bit of it. But there were just so many things wrong with this film. Muting Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool so that he can't talk, taking away, essentially, Deadpool's biggest weapon, which is his mouth. Not going really deep into a lot of the stuff that happened, early in the Wolverine's life. Not, kind of like a pandering, shifty sort of way that they did the entire film. Honestly, as if this was the first film that came out in the X-Men franchise, and we might look at it a little bit better. But at that point, I think we expected a lot more from the X-Men franchise. And seeing when Wolverine came out, I can tell you I was not impressed, and I wasn't happy. I think I've actually, and this doesn't like this goes. This is actually a big statement for me because I actually am the kind of person that even watches, some of the quote-unquote bad superhero movies over and over again. I have maybe seen Origins Wolverine once, maybe twice. That's it. From start to finish, definitely only once. Maybe I caught it a couple of times in between when I was trying to watch, when I was just like had nothing else to watch. That says a lot because the next few films on this list, I've seen a bunch of times, and as much as I know that the quality of the movie wasn't there. So I completely agree that the X-Men Origins Wolverine movie deserves to be where it is. The next one on the list is X-Men Last Stand. Now, I have to say I was very disappointed in Last Stand. I hated a lot of things they did. Killing Professor Xavier and never kind of like really going into the fact of how he was coming back and in what way he came back, killing, really just rushing into the Dark Phoenix saga sucked. And killing Jean Grey sucked. Killing off Cyclops that early in the movie sucked. mixing up different mutant powers. Like we had a version of Marrow in that film, and it was a guy, and that made me mad. Like I just feel like Brett Ratner, who took over the franchise at that point, said, "Ooh, mutants? Let's throw a whole bunch of them in there. Haha, this will be fun." I like the fact that, Magneto kind of formed his own new, alliance. Couple of characters in there that we hadn't seen. But again, we had Quake, who was, played by a female. That wasn't, the normal comic book way. There's a lot of stuff in this film that bothers people. With that being said, as bad as it was, I've probably seen it 10 times. Because, when I was a kid, you get something on DVD, you keep watching it. You don't stop. So I really thought that this was an awful, awful film, when it comes to the X-Men franchise. Definitely the worst of the group X-Men movies. But, even still, as bad as it was, was like leaps and bounds over the original Wolverine movie. The movie was so bad. Okay, so the next on the list is actually the first one I disagree with. X-Men Apocalypse. I don't understand everybody's hatred for this movie. Now, I know it wasn't great, but I really liked it. Everybody has a lot of complaints about it, but I thought it wasn't a bad film. I feel like X-Men Apocalypse has suffered from a villain who wasn't that well thought out and wasn't used in the right way because they had a very talented actor playing Apocalypse. I actually don't dislike this movie at all. And I think that if it was up to me, this movie would be swapped with the movie that's actually before it. So I'm not going to say I want to move it up an extended amount on the list, but I really do believe it was actually not a terrible movie, and people constantly crapped on it. And it got the same treatment as the Batman vs. Superman film, which I admit I bought into the hype of Batman vs. Superman, did not go see it in the theater, because as soon as that movie came out, they decided that they were going to release the extended edition. And I said, well, if this is the way that they want me to see this movie, I'm going to wait until then. I loved it. I thought it was a good film. With that being said, when coming back to Apocalypse, I think it was a great initiation to this new X-Men team. I liked some of the actors that they picked. I think that they did a good job in explaining some backstories. Yeah, some of the stuff wasn't that cool. The Archangel idea. Olivia Munn barely getting any dialogue, and as Psylocke, who was one of the coolest mutants, and they really didn't use a lot of her really well. And that weird ending for her where she just kind of walks away. The Magneto story, I thought, was the thing that brought this whole film together. I loved Magneto in this film. I love that he went off on a ranch somewhere and said, I'm going to just be by myself. And then all of a sudden, some crap goes down. They find out he's a mutant. They hunt him down. They kill his kid. They kill his wife, and he goes berserk. I got it. I thought it was good. I thought that they did a lot of good things in that film, and it far outweighed some of the negatives about it. I know a lot of people might disagree with me on it, but it's just my podcast and my opinion. I actually liked Apocalypse a lot. The next film, the one that I said I would switch it with, is The Wolverine. Now, this is much better than the X-Men Origins Wolverine film. 100% better. But it still didn't. They do like these things in these Wolverine movies where I feel like they, I'm sorry. Well, some of the Wolverine movies where I feel like they, took something and just saw like an idea in a comic and said, "Oh, we're gonna go run with that." I love Silver Samurai in the comics. He was such a pansy in the film, though. The final battle scene was just, everything about it. And I was all about this movie. I was hyped. I love the, I've read the Wolverine comic where he goes back to Japan, and he has that whole backstory and, in Japan. I loved it. So I was really excited to see that this is the route they were going, and I was not happy about the execution. I actually think that this movie was definitely worse than Apocalypse. I think that if you go back and you watch them back to back, you'll see it. Take your judgment about Apocalypse and how much you hate it. Watch it with an open mind, then watch X-Men, watch The Wolverine. And I think Apocalypse is the better film. The next one on the list is First Class. Here's another classic idea where I would switch two movies. First Class was awesome. I saw that movie the first time, saw it in the theater, watched it like 10 times back when it came out on DVD and on cable. I loved this movie. I thought this was the thing that resurrected the X-Men franchise. Where X3 looked like it was going to kill the franchise, Days of Futures Past rescued it. I'm sorry, not Days of Futures Past. I'm getting ahead of myself. First Class, absolutely resurrected it. I love the Wolverine cameo, just, basically telling, Professor X and Magneto to go screw off. I'm going to try not to curse. But, that wasn't, he used another choice 4-letter word instead of screw. But with that being said, everything about that film was really good. I like the addition of a lot of the different characters, Azazel and Banshee, some of the unsung here guys in that. I loved that we had Emma Frost coming in and making her on-screen debut. I really liked the way that they did everything in this film. I really loved that they went all out. They made they gave Magneto's origin story. In a way, they gave Professor X's origin story. They went back to the beginning. They said, we're going to go and we're going to do this and we're going to do it right. And they did it right. And I think it was a great movie. Now, I would swap that with the next film that came up on this list, according to comicbookmovie.com, X2 X-Men United. Don't get me wrong. X2 was fun. And it's definitely the best of the original trilogy. It's very rare that you see a film that comes out after an original and is as a sequel and is as good, if not better, than the first one. And this was the one that actually surpassed it. In X2, we got the introduction to Nightcrawler. We had the whole idea of getting back to the Wolverine story at Alkali Lake. We had General Stryker in there. Mystique was so cool in this film. It highlighted. Everybody didn't have a shit ton of screen time. There we go. I just blew it and cursed, but whatever. But everybody didn't have a lot of screen time in the film, but everything was used the right way when they did. You really got the sense that Cyclops was a leader. You got the sense that Wolverine, in that that weird awkward love triangle, cared so much about Jean. You didn't know where Jean wanted to go. There was so many good things done in this movie. I thought it was excellent. I just think Days of Future Past, First Class is just a little bit better. Now, I keep saying the name of this, so I may as well talk about it now. Days of Futures Past. I actually heard a lot of people, now this is number 2 on their list. I actually heard a lot of people talk and say that they don't like Days of Futures Past, and I thought that they were crazy. This film they rectified everything in the X-Men franchise. They came in and they decided that they were going to, overwrite what X3 did. And I like that they went back to the originals and said, okay, here's a clear line in the sand. We have to fix this. Professor X is still alive. What's his name? I'm sorry. Cyclops is still alive. Jean Grey is still alive. These are things that we had to rectify from the original films. We had to bring it back. We had to, go and change a lot of stuff. And I love that they went back and with Wolverine in the 70s. And I didn't think I wanted that, but after I saw it, I realized I needed it. The fight with the Sentinels. The opening scene with those advanced Sentinels and, them just destroying and killing every member of the X-Men team until, we got brought back by Bishop and Kitty to, another universe where they know, we're going to get attacked at this time, so we can better prepare. I thought it was great. I actually love the Rogue cut. I love how they went to go get Rogue. They, to help out. I loved the fact that they had Professor X and Magneto almost like 2 old cowboys riding off into the sunset as their last, big major thing that they're going to do together. This movie was beautiful. It was well made, and it honestly, when you look at some of the people will rank some of the best comic book movies of all time. Marvel is going to dominate that list, but I think that this is one of those films that's going to get lost in the shuffle because I think it was better than some of the Marvel films. I think it's great, and I think that if you guys don't think so, you need to go back and reevaluate and watch it again because I think it was so well done. Days of Futures Past is one of the best X-Men movies ever made. Now we get to number 1. Is there really debate? If you saw Logan, you will know that it is the best Fox movie that they've ever done in the X-Men franchise. Logan was unbelievable. Now, I mean, we can go, I'm not going to get too deep into this because if you really want to hear about my opinions, you'll hear about it last week. But I loved all the things they did in it. I loved how Professor X was, a shell of his former self to a point, but still smart enough to not take those pills to make sure that he still had his wits about him so he can save his own skin. I loved that, they introduced somebody like Caliban who, didn't seem like he was going to have that major of a role and wound up being a really cool character. I loved, just old man Logan. I don't want to pop my claws out. I don't want to rip your skull off. But if you get in my way, I will. I mean, we talked about the differences between the comics and the movie, and this is one of the things that I didn't bring up last week. But I have a feeling, my thing is this. You have a certain expectation when we see comic book movies that they're going to go down a playlist of all the stuff that we see in the comics. The good thing about the X-Men franchise is that they never did that. And Marvel followed suit. We're never going to see a move-for-move adaptation from a comic book to the big screen because you always want to do something different. And Logan kept me guessing. Right until the end, when he died, it kept me guessing. Professor X dying the way he didn't see it coming. I thought this was going to be a situation where Logan has to put him down. And, instead it was a clone of Logan who kills him. I love the nods, his name being James Howlett. There's just everything about this movie was right, except for the fact that, it was the last time we'll ever see Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman in those roles. But they did such an excellent job, and this was the absolute best send-off that they could have done. I think that for me, this is one of those movies that is near perfection. They did X-23 right. I mean, they did cancel on, the idea that a very, very early in production, they were talking about putting Dakin in the film. But you know what? You can't have everything. The idea that X-23 was his daughter, so cool. I liked everything that they did in this film, and it is by far the best in the series. Now, as you know, I usually close off my podcasts with a comic of the week. Now, this is something that I actually, I'm kind of going a little bit off kilter here. It's something a little bit different, something a little bit new. What I'm going to do is give you just a character here, and it's a collection of his best. It's called Essential Moon Knight. If you guys don't know who Moon Knight is and you've never read Moon Knight, do yourselves a favor and get into it. Moon Knight is one of the coolest characters in, comics, and he doesn't get a lot of credit. And there's been a lot of rumors that the next phase of the Marvel Netflix universe may have Moon Knight in there. So do yourselves a favor, pick up Essential Moon Knight. Look, it's a bit pricey on Amazon. It's like $34, but it's a huge book, and it covers a lot of the Moon Knight stories, his origin. It shows a lot about who Moon Knight is. Do yourselves a favor. Get yourselves acclimated with Moon Knight, because I'm telling you, you will not regret it. That's it this week for the Geek Guy Podcast. As you know, you can follow us on social media, and we'll be back next week with another exciting edition. Thank you guys for listening. This has been Albert Albanese on the Geek Guy Podcast. Thanks for listening to the Geek Guy Podcast right here on the Slam Sessions Podcast Network. You can follow us on Twitter at the Slam Sessions. We'll see you guys next time, and may the Force be with you.